The Grand Citadel was the largest structure ever built by any living species. It floated in the orbit of a dying red star, and its halls stretched so far that light itself seemed to get tired crossing them. 4,000 species governed the known galaxy from this place. They made laws here. They decided who lived in peace and who lived in fear. And today, they had gathered to decide what to do about Earth. Han Do-yun sat in the human delegation's seat, a small chair in a small corner, and at the very back of the chamber. That was where they always put humanity. Close enough to hear, far enough to forget. He wore a dark suit, clean shoes, and a calm expression that had not changed once in the 6 hours since the session began. One by one, the species rose to speak against Earth. The Corvalli were first. Their commander, a broad creature named Dren, with arms like steel beams and a voice like grinding metal, slammed his fist on the podium. And he accused humanity of stealing Corvalli shield technology. He said human engineers had taken apart a Corvalli defense unit and rebuilt it in 11 months. It had taken the Corvalli Empire 600 years to develop that same technology. He called it an act of war. The Tessari went next. High Arbiter Volesi, the chairperson of the Galactic Council, was Tessari herself. She had 7 eyes, and every single one of them looked tired. She did not shout like Dren. She spoke softly and said that humanity was civilizationally unstable. She said humans grew too fast, asked too many questions, and did not understand the value of patience. She said that in her 2,000 years of life, she had never seen a species so young move so recklessly. Then came the Palian Collective, a hive-mind species that thought with 1 billion brains at once. Their delegate, Moore, did not use emotions. Moore simply stood and read a single sentence from a statistical model. No, the probability of human dominance within 300 cycles is 94.6%. We recommend removal. The chamber hummed with agreement. Do-yun could feel it, the weight of 4,000 civilizations pressing down on one small blue planet. Other species followed. Some were angry, some were afraid. A few were just following the crowd, voting the way the powerful told them to vote. But the result was going to be the same. Everyone in that room knew it. When it was finally Earth's turn to speak, the chamber went quiet. Volesi looked at Do-yun with all 7 of her eyes and said, "The representative of Earth may now present its defense." Do-yun stood up slowly. He straightened his tie. He looked around the room, at the thousands of alien faces staring down at him, waiting for him to beg, waiting for him to threaten, waiting for the desperate, wild reaction that every other banished species had shown before. He smiled. "We understand," he said. His voice was calm and clear and carried no anger at all. "If the Council believes the galaxy is safer without us, then we will go." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Do-yun bowed, a short, respectful bow, turned around, and walked out of the chamber. His footsteps echoed in the silence for a long, long time. The vote came 15 minutes later. It was unanimous. Earth was banished beyond the outer rim, exiled to the dead zones of the galaxy, a vast, empty region where no trade routes existed, no communication relays worked, and no help could reach them. It was the harshest punishment the Council had ever given to a species that had not started a war. Volesi signed the decree herself. Her hand trembled slightly, though she would never admit it. Something about the way that human had smiled bothered her. It was not the smile of a defeated man, but she pushed the thought away and sealed the document. 8 light years away, President Bak Suwan received the news in his office in Seoul. He was an old man with white hair and a soldier's posture. He had fought in wars before the galaxy even knew Earth existed. He had shaken hands with alien diplomats while his intelligence officers listened to their private communications. He was not a man who was easily surprised. He read the decree carefully. He read it again. Then he set it down on his desk and looked up at the people sitting across from him. The Yun Hana was there, the chief engineer of Earth's Deep Space Research Division. She was a quiet woman who wore her hair tied back and her sleeves rolled up, even in the president's office. She had been building things the council could not imagine for the last 15 years. No Yunji was there too, the head of Earth's Intelligence Bureau. She had short hair, sharp eyes, and a reputation for knowing things before they happened. And it was Yunji who had intercepted council communications 20 years ago, suggesting that exile was coming. 20 years of warning, 20 years of preparation, and Kwon Ji-seok sat in the corner, arms crossed, saying nothing. He was the captain of the ESS Horizon, Earth's most advanced ship, a vessel so quiet it could pass through an enemy fleet without being noticed. Ji-seok never spoke much. He did not need to. When he walked into a room, even people who had never met him understood that he was dangerous. Suwon looked at each of them. Then he said 2 words. "Begin phase quiet." Hana nodded. Her eyes were already bright with calculations. Yunji nodded. She had been waiting for this order for a decade. Ji-seok uncrossed his arms and stood up. He was ready. And somewhere deep inside Earth's most secret research facility, buried under a mountain in a place that had no name on any map, machines that had been sleeping for 20 years began to wake up. The galaxy thought it had thrown humanity into a grave. It had no idea it had just opened the cage. 5 years after the banishment, the galaxy forgot about Earth. It happened faster than anyone expected. The Corvalli threw a celebration that lasted an entire cycle. Commander Dren gave speeches about how his empire had removed the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. And the Tasari updated their historical records and filed humanity under contained anomalies. The Palian Collective adjusted their probability models, marked Earth as a closed variable, and moved on to other calculations. Nobody sent a probe to check. Nobody sent a message. The dead zones beyond the outer rim were exactly what the name suggested. Dead. No energy, no resources, no communication relays. Every species that had ever been exiled there had gone silent within a generation. It was not a punishment. It was an ending. So the galaxy moved on, and Earth became a story that parents told their children when they wanted to teach them a lesson about knowing your place. But inside the Sol system, the lights were on. Yun Hana had not slept more than 4 hours a night since phase quiet began, and she did not plan to start now. That she stood in the main control room of Facility Zero, the underground complex hidden beneath a mountain that officially did not exist, and watched as her engineers brought the 7th precursor relay online. The relays were ancient, older than the Council, older than any living civilization. They had been built by a species that no one remembered, scattered across the dead zones like seeds waiting for rain. The Council had discovered them thousands of years ago and immediately panicked. The relays could move ships across impossible distances in seconds. They could carry data faster than light. They could connect every corner of the galaxy in ways that made the Council's own communication network look like children passing notes in class. The Council could not destroy them. They had tried. So instead, they sealed the entire region, declared it a dead zone, erased it from public records, and made sure no one ever went looking. And No Yunji had found the truth buried in intercepted Council archives 12 years before the banishment. She had spent 3 years confirming it, cross-referencing stolen data from 6 different species, and when she finally brought the report to President Suwon, she had said only one thing. They did not exile us to a graveyard. They exiled us to a treasure chest, and they do not even know it. Now Hana's teams were opening that chest, one relay at a time. The work was dangerous. When the precursor technology did not operate on any principles that human science fully understood. 3 engineers had been hospitalized in the first year alone. One relay had nearly torn a hole in local space-time when they activated it wrong. But Hana was patient. She was careful. and she was very, very good at her job. By the third year of exile, they had 4 relays working. By the 5th year, they had 11. Captain Kwan Jiseok took the Horizon out through the relay network on the first deep scouting mission. What he found made him sit down in his chair and stare at the navigation screen for a full minute without speaking. The dead zones were full of worlds, hundreds of them. Planets rich with metals, water, and energy. Ancient shipyards still floating in orbit around forgotten stars, their construction bays dark but intact, and buried on one particular moon. Behind a door that had not been opened in 60,000 years, Jiseok's team found a data archive. It took Hana's best people 7 months to translate even a fraction of it. But what they found changed everything. The archive contained engineering blueprints, material science beyond anything the galaxy currently possessed, and, most importantly, a complete map of the relay network. Every single node, every single connection. A web that stretched across the entire galaxy. I'd hidden in plain sight. Humanity did not just have a new home. It had a highway system that no one else could see. Jiseok made 14 scouting runs in the first 2 years. On each one, he brought back data, resources, and sometimes things that Hana's engineers could not even name yet. He mapped routes through the relay network that cut travel times from years to hours. He found worlds where human colonies could grow without limits, without borders, without anyone telling them to slow down. And the colonies began quietly. Small groups of volunteers, farmers, builders, scientists, traveling through the relays to settle on worlds that had been empty for millennia. They built with whatever they had. They grew food in alien soil. They raised children under unfamiliar stars. And they never once complained, because every single one of them understood what this was. This was not exile. This was a beginning. Back on Earth, President Baek Suwon received weekly reports. The population growth across the colonies, resource extraction rates, fleet construction progress, Hana's engineering breakthroughs, Yoonji's intelligence updates from Council space, still flowing in through channels so secret that even most of Earth's government did not know they existed. And every week, Suwon read one more report, the one from Han Doyon. Doyon was still in Council space. And he lived on a small diplomatic station at the very edge of civilized territory, the only human still permitted to exist inside the Council's borders. His official title was Exile Liaison, a meaningless position created so the Council could say they had not completely cut off communication with Earth. He played the role perfectly. He wore old clothes. He ate simple food. He spoke softly and never argued with anyone. When alien diplomats passed him in the corridors, they saw a tired, broken man, the last sad echo of a failed species. They did not see the encrypted communication device hidden in the lining of his coat. They did not see the reports he received from Yoonji every night at exactly 3 in the morning. They did not know that behind his tired eyes, Doyon was tracking every political shift, every military movement, every whispered conversation in the council chambers. He was not a liaison, he was a listening post. And every night, after reading his reports, he would delete them, lie down on his small bed, and smile at the ceiling. 5 years after the galaxy had thrown humanity into the dark, Earth had 11 active precursor relays, 6 growing colonies, a fleet of 32 new ships under construction, and a complete map of the most powerful infrastructure network in galactic history. The galaxy thought Earth was dying. Earth had never been more alive. 15 years after the banishment, the galaxy started to break. It began slowly. Yeah, the way all collapses do. Small things first. A trade agreement between the Corvalli Empire and the Tassari Dominion fell apart over a border dispute. A minor species called the Orani lost their homeworld to a Corvalli mining operation, and no one in the council stopped it. 3 more species filed formal complaints about Corvalli aggression. The complaints were ignored. Commander Dren had grown powerful in the years since Earth's exile. The Corvallis military had doubled in size, and their ships patrolled neutral space as if they owned it. Dren gave speeches about galactic security and maintaining order, but everyone knew what he really meant. He meant power. He meant control. And without humanity to serve as the common enemy that kept everyone else united, there was nothing holding the old alliances together. The Tessari tried to push back. High Arbiter Volesi imposed economic sanctions on the Corvallis Empire. Dren laughed at them, and he pulled his trade ships from Tessari space and redirected them to species that were too afraid to say no. Within a year, 6 smaller civilizations were completely dependent on Corvallis resources. The Palian Collective watched all of this with 1 billion minds working at once. Delegate Muir stood before the council and delivered a warning that nobody wanted to hear. Internal conflict probability has risen to 67.2%. The stabilizing variable that was removed has not been replaced. The stabilizing variable. That was what they called humanity now. A variable, a number in a model, not a civilization, not a people. A variable that they had removed because it scared them. Nobody listened to Moore. Nobody ever listened to Moore until it was too late. The first refugees appeared at the edge of the outer rim 2 years later. They were Orani, the same species that had lost their homeworld to Corvallis mining. Their ships were small, old, and barely holding together. They had nowhere to go. The council had not helped them. Their allies had not helped them. So they drifted outward toward the dead zones, because dying in empty space felt better than dying under Corvallis boots. They expected to find nothing. Instead, they found a human patrol ship waiting for them. Captain Kwan Jiseok was on the bridge of the horizon when the Orani convoy appeared on his sensors, and he looked at the readings. 12 ships, all civilian, no weapons, low fuel, 340 passengers including children, and he gave one order. Bring them in. The Orani were brought to a human colony on a world they had no name for. They were given food, clean water, medical treatment, and shelters. Nobody asked them to sign anything. Nobody asked them to pledge loyalty or provide service. A human woman handed the Orani elder a bowl of hot soup and said, "You are safe now. Arrest." The elder stared at her for a long time. Then he started to cry. Word spread. It moved through the galaxy's underground networks, the smugglers, the refugees, the forgotten species that the Council had never cared about, the exiled ones, the humans. They were alive, and they were helping. More refugees came, the Balesi, a species of engineers whose planet had been blockaded by the Corvallis, the Dun, then a small, peaceful species that had been forced to manufacture weapons for Dren's fleet. The Irathi, who had simply been forgotten by the Council for so long that they had no representation and no protection left. Jiseok welcomed every single one of them. He set up a processing system, medical stations, housing assignments. He trained human and alien volunteers to work together. And he repeated the same sentence to every new arrival, in every language, until it became the unofficial motto of the entire Outer Rim. Out here, no one gets left behind. Yunhana saw the opportunity immediately. These were not just refugees. These were engineers, scientists, doctors, teachers, builders. Every species that arrived brought knowledge that humanity did not have. The Balesi understood energy systems better than any human engineer. The Irathi had biological science that could revolutionize medicine. The Dun, despite their small size, were the finest precision manufacturers in the galaxy. Hana began integrating alien expertise into the precursor technology research. The progress was extraordinary. Problems that her human teams had been stuck on for years were solved in weeks when alien minds approached them from different angles. New ships were designed. Not human ships, not alien ships, but something new. Hybrid vessels built with human engineering, precursor frameworks, and alien innovation. They were faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything the Council had ever seen. A fleet was growing in the dead zones. And it was not just a human fleet anymore. No Aonji tracked everything from her intelligence center on Earth. She had agents in Council space, listening posts in 17 systems, and data streams that the Council did not even know existed. She watched the Corvally expand. She watched the Tessari weaken. She watched the smaller species suffer. And she built files on every single one of them, their strengths, their weaknesses, their breaking points. She also watched Han Doyun. Doyun was still on his little station at the edge of Council space, still playing the role of the defeated exile. But recently, he had started receiving visitors. Alien diplomats, low-ranking ones, the kind nobody paid attention to, would stop by his station for routine check-ins. They would sit with him, drink tea, and ask careful questions about the Outer Rim. Doyun never told them anything real. He smiled. He shrugged. He said things like, "We manage. Life is quiet out there." But the visits kept coming. More and more of them. One evening, Delegate Muir arrived unannounced. The Palian representative stepped into Doyun's small quarters, looked around at the bare walls and simple furniture, and stood very still. "What are your people doing out there, Ambassador?" Muir asked. And Doyun poured tea into 2 cups and pushed one across the table. "Surviving," he said. "Is that not what exiles do?" Moore's hive mind processed the response across 1 billion connected nodes. It cross-referenced Doyun's tone, his body language, the micro-expressions on his face, the slight warmth in his voice that did not match the words he was saying. It ran the data through probability models that had predicted the behavior of civilizations for 10,000 years. And for the first time in the collective's entire existence, the models returned a result they had never generated before. They could not tell if he was lying. Moore picked up the tea, looked at it, and looked at Doyun. "You are not surviving," Moore said quietly. "You are becoming something." Doyun sipped his tea and said nothing, but his eyes were smiling. 22 years after the banishment, the galaxy burned. Commander Dren had finally done what everyone feared and no one prevented. He launched a full-scale invasion of the Tessari homeworlds. 300 Corvally warships crossed the border at dawn, and by midday, the Tessari defense fleet was shattered. The oldest civilization in the galaxy, the one that had built the Council, written its laws, and kept the peace for 10,000 years, was on its knees in a matter of hours. The Council called an emergency session. It was chaos. Delegates screamed at each other. Smaller species accused the Tessari of weakness. The Tessari accused everyone of betrayal. 6 species walked out of the chamber entirely. The Palian Collective delivered one final statistical report. Galactic structural collapse. Probability now 91.3%. And then Moore sat down and said nothing more. High Arbiter Volesi stood at the center of it all, her 7 eyes moving across the chamber, watching everything fall apart. She was 2,040 years old. She had guided the galaxy through 17 crises. She had never lost control of a session before. She lost control of this one in the first 10 minutes. When the shouting finally stopped, not because anyone calmed down, but because everyone was too exhausted to continue, Volesi did something she had never done in her entire career. She left the chamber, went to her private office, sat down at her communication terminal, and typed a message. It was addressed to Ambassador Han Doyun, the Exile Liaison, Outer Rim. "The galaxy is burning. We need your help." She sent it through dead relays and forgotten channels, the old pathways that had been left behind when the Outer Rim was sealed off. She expected it to take weeks to arrive if it arrived at all. It arrived in 4 seconds. Doyun read the message on his small station at the edge of Council space. He read it twice. Then he forwarded it to Earth. President Baek Suwon received it 11 seconds later. He was 79 years old now. His hair was white, his hands were slower than they used to be, and he needed glasses to read. But his mind was the same sharp blade it had always been, and when he read Volesi's words, he did not hesitate. He called the War Council. They gathered in the deep command center beneath the mountain, the same facility where Faye's quiet had begun 22 years ago. But the room looked nothing like it had back then, and the walls were covered with holographic displays showing fleet positions, relay network maps, colony status reports, and real-time intelligence feeds from across the galaxy. Yoon Hana presented the fleet. 300 ships, each one built on precursor frameworks with hybrid technology from 12 different species. The smallest of them was faster than anything the Corvallis had. The largest of them carried enough firepower to crack a moon. But more importantly, every single ship was equipped with relay jump capability. They could appear anywhere in the galaxy in seconds, moving through the precursor network like blood through veins. Kwon Ji-seok presented the crew. 47 species. Humans and aliens, trained together for years, living together, eating together, trusting each other with their lives. The Orani who had arrived as refugees now served as navigation specialists. The Balesi ran engineering departments, and the Dun maintained weapon systems with a precision that no human hand could match. This was not a human fleet with alien guests. This was a coalition. No Yeonji presented the intelligence. She pulled up a three-dimensional map of the entire galaxy and lit it up like a Christmas tree. Every Corvallis fleet position, every supply line, every communication relay, every weakness in Dren's command structure. She had been watching the Corvallis for 15 years, and she knew things about their military that Dren's own officers did not know. His command line is extended, Yoonji said, pointing to the Tasari border. He pushed everything forward for the invasion. His rear is completely exposed. He has no reserves. If we hit his supply corridor here, here, and here, his entire fleet loses power within 6 hours. Suwon looked at the map. Then he looked at the three people who had built everything he was seeing, and the engineer who had unlocked ancient technology, the captain who had welcomed every refugee, the spy who had watched the galaxy with eyes it never knew were there. "Are we ready?" he asked. Hana nodded without hesitation. Ji-seok nodded once, the way he always did, short, solid, final. Yoonji closed her files and folded her hands. Han Do-yeon attended via hologram from his station in council space. His projection flickered slightly in the dim light of the command center. Now he looked at Suwon with that same calm smile he had worn in the council chamber 22 years ago. "We were ready before they banished us," Do-yeon said. Suwon stood up. He was old and tired, but his voice filled the room like thunder. "Then let us go remind the galaxy who we are." The fleet moved. It did not creep through the outer rim. It did not sneak across borders. It erupted. 17 relay gates activated simultaneously across the galaxy, and from each one, a human-led coalition ships poured into council space like water breaking through a dam. They appeared in places no fleet should have been able to reach, behind Corvallis lines, above contested worlds, beside refugee convoys that were moments away from destruction. Commander Dren was in the middle of his assault on the Tasari homeworld when his sensor officer screamed. 40 ships had appeared directly behind his command line. They had not been there 1 second ago, and they had not traveled through any known route. They were simply there, as if the universe itself had placed them. Ji-seok stood on the bridge of the horizon and opened a communication channel, not to Dren, not to the Corvallis fleet, to everyone, every ship, every station, every planet with a receiver. "This is Captain Kwon Ji-seok of the United Earth Coalition. We were exiled because you feared what we might become. You were right to be afraid, but not for the reasons you thought. We did not come back for revenge. We came back because you called." He paused. His voice was calm, but it carried weight that shook the stars. "Stand down your weapons, or we will stand them down for you." Grinned did not stand down. He was too proud, too angry, too afraid of what standing down would mean. The battle lasted 11 minutes. The coalition fleet moved through the Corvallis formation like wind through leaves. They did not destroy ships. They disabled them. Surgical strikes to engines, weapons, and communications, precise, clean, and impossibly fast. Every shot was calculated. Every move was coordinated across all 47 species working as one. When it was over, 300 Corvallis warships floated dead in space. Not one of them was destroyed. Not one crew member was killed. Every life was preserved. Every ship was intact. Humanity did not want corpses. Humanity wanted witnesses. Grinned sat on his darkened bridge, surrounded by silence. He was staring at the view screen where the horizon hung like a ghost. And for the first time in his life, Commander Grinned understood what real power looked like. It did not look like a bigger gun. It looked like the ability to win without using one. The war ended before most of the galaxy even knew it had started. Within 48 hours of the coalition fleet's arrival, the Corvallis military was completely dismantled. Not destroyed, dismantled. And their ships were powered down and towed to holding zones. Their weapons were removed and catalogued. Their soldiers were given food, medical treatment, and a choice: go home peacefully or stay and face a tribunal conducted by the species they had invaded. Commander Grinned was handed over to the Tessari. Not in chains, not beaten, not humiliated. Giseok walked him off the horizon personally, looked him in the eye and said, "What happens next is between you and the people you hurt, and not us." Grinned did not say a word. For the first time in his life, he had nothing to say. The Tessari homeworld was secured. Coalition medical ships landed on the surface and began treating the wounded, Tessari and Corvallis alike. They did not separate the injured by species. A Banish doctor treated a Corvallis soldier with a broken arm. A human nurse held the hand of a dying Tessari elder. An Orani child brought water to anyone who was thirsty. When the Tessari governor saw this, and she stood very still for a long time. Then she turned to the coalition officer beside her, a young dun no taller than her knee, and asked, "Why are you helping them? The Corvallis attacked you too. They supported your exile." The dun looked up at her with wide, serious eyes. "Captain Giseok says we do not decide who deserves help. We just help." The governor said nothing. She looked out at the field where human and alien medics moved through the wreckage together, and she understood something that the Galactic Council had never understood in 10,000 years of existence. Power was not about who you could punish. It was about who you chose to save. 3 weeks later, High Arbiter Valesi called an emergency session at the Grand Citadel. It was the largest gathering in Council history. 4,000 species filled the chamber, and for the first time, the room was completely silent before the session even began. No arguments, no accusations, and no political games. Just silence, and a feeling that something very old was about to end. The doors at the far end of the chamber opened, and Han Doyun walked in. He was older now. 23 years had passed since the last time he stood in this room. His hair was gray at the temples. There were lines around his eyes that had not been there before. He walked a little slower, but his back was straight, his suit was clean, and he was smiling. He always smiled. The 4,000 species watched him cross the floor. The same floor he had walked out of 23 years ago, when he had accepted their verdict with a bow and left them in stunned silence. Now he was walking back, and the silence was even deeper. Valesi stood at the podium. She was ancient now. Her 7 eyes were dim, and she leaned on the podium for support. But her voice was still clear when she spoke. "Ambassador Doyun, the Galactic Council recognizes that it made a grave error in banishing humanity from civilized space. We hereby formally invite Earth to rejoin the Galactic Council with full membership, all privileges restored, and a permanent seat on the High Assembly." She paused. The chamber held its breath. "We also wish to express our gratitude for the Coalition's intervention. Without your aid, the Tasari homeworld would have fallen, and the galaxy would have descended into a war from which it might never have recovered." Doyen reached the podium. He looked up at Valesi. He looked around the chamber at the thousands of faces watching him, the same faces that had voted to throw his people into the dark. Some of those faces showed guilt, some showed fear, a few showed genuine respect. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small data chip. He placed it gently on the podium. "Thank you, High Arbiter," he said. "Truly. But we did not come back to rejoin your council." The chamber stirred. Murmurs rippled through 4,000 delegations. "This chip contains the founding charter of the United Earth Coalition. It is a new alliance. 47 species built in exile, governed by shared consent, open borders, equal voice, and one founding principle." He looked directly at Valesi. "No species gets left behind." Valesi blinked all 7 of her eyes. "Ambassador, are you saying that Earth is refusing the invitation?" "I am saying that we are offering a different one." Doyen turned to face the entire chamber. "The Coalition is open to any species that wants to join. No entrance tests, no provisional memberships, no quotas, no exile votes. You are all welcome." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer. "Even the ones who banished us, especially the ones who banished us." Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. And 4,000 species sat in perfect stillness as the words settled over them like snow. Doyen bowed, the same short, respectful bow he had given 23 years ago. Then he turned around and walked out. His footsteps echoed in the silence. And this time, the echo felt like the beginning of something instead of the end. In the weeks that followed, species began to leave the council, not in anger and not in protest. They left quietly, one by one. It like people walking toward a light they had been waiting their whole lives to see. The Orani were first. They had been with the Coalition since the beginning. The Balesi followed, then the Dun. Then species that had never spoken to a human before but had heard the stories. Had heard the sentence that Giseok repeated to every lost soul who drifted into the outer rim. Out here, no one gets left behind. President Baek Suwan watched the migration reports from his office on Earth. He was 80 years old. He would not live to see everything that was coming, and he knew it. But he had lived long enough to see the beginning. And that was enough. Hana sent him engineering projections. At current growth rates, the Coalition would surpass the Council in infrastructure, technology, and population within 10 years. Not because they were competing, because people wanted to be part of something that welcomed them. Yunji confirmed that Valesi had sent a private, encrypted message to Doyen requesting a personal meeting. The old Arbiter had not told the Council. She had not told anyone. The message was 3 words long. "I want to understand." And on the bridge of the horizon, drifting through the stars that humanity had been thrown into like garbage and had turned into a garden, Kwon Jiseok stood with his hands behind his back and watched a convoy of alien ships enter Coalition space. There were hundreds of them. Ships from species he had never met, flying toward a future they had chosen for themselves. His first officer, a young Tessari woman named Vel, who had been born during the war and raised in a Coalition school, looked up at him from her console. "Captain, do you think the Council will survive?" Jisuk watched the convoy for a long time. The ships moved slowly through the darkness, their lights blinking like fireflies, each one carrying families and futures and the simple, desperate hope that somewhere out there, to the view screen. The stars stretched out to the view screen. The stars stretched out in every direction, billions of them, bright and silent and full of possibility. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was changing, and humanity, as always, was walking forward.